Well, welcome everyone. We're really excited to have you join us. We will be talking about 5 strategies for facilitating engagement in your online course. Amy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Amy Ahearn. I am a Senior Innovation Associate and Instructional Designer at Plus Acumen. Plus Acumen is an online learning academy dedicated to helping people become more active and effective at creating social change and tackling problems of poverty. So we host about 40 online courses, many of which are on NovoEd, and collectively they've enrolled about 400,000 people.
Awesome. And I'm Lisa Brefini. I'm a Learning Experience Associate here at NovoEd. I also serve as Course Operations Specialist and Learner Community Manager for our Philanthropy University courses, which are 7 courses in social impact and nonprofit capacity building that are run on the NovoEd platform. So that's us, and we'll show this slide again at the end with our email addresses in case you have any questions and want to reach out to us personally. We welcome that. Another quick note is that you can submit questions for us in the question box. At the end, hopefully we'll have time, we'll select some questions to address, but for any that we don't get to, we can respond to you individually after the webinar ends. And the slides and recording will be shared via email after the webinar. So if you miss anything, you will have that recording to refer back to. All right, so we have 5 tips for boosting engagement in your online course, and we've found that these general best practices can be applied to most public, private, and blended courses, whether large or small. But really the most important point that we want to drive home today is that you'll have to try different things and tweak your plan to figure out what works well for your course and your learners. But it's essential before your course begins just to have a plan and to stick with it. You can tweak things after your course ends before you offer it a second time, but having a plan is really important. So just to show you, we're going to go through the 5 different tips today. We'll talk about onboarding and community, learning pit stops, intervention, teaching presence and feedback, and then we'll talk about beyond the class. So we really tried to frame this to kind of follow along with a learner's journey through the course. And then we'll try to save time for a Q&A at the end. So carve out time for onboarding and leverage community to set your learners up for success. So leading up to and during the beginning of your course, you want to really ask yourself 2 questions. What behaviors will model desired weekly engagement? So as early as possible, ask learners to practice behaviors that reflect how you want them to engage for the rest of the course. Get them used to posting in discussions, have them introduce themselves, comment on peers' posts, ask questions, complete their profiles, really kind of get them, engaging very early on in the course so that they're kind of set up to do that throughout the course. And the second question is, what information and resources do they need in order to be successful? So, introducing the course community and support resources from day one will really help learners to be confident and self-sufficient as they progress through the remainder of the course. And, providing them with those activities to connect with their fellow learners will really promote felt accountability, which encourages, higher levels of commitment and motivation throughout a course. So in those early stages, it's really important to foster peer support, establish guidelines for collaboration, and identify those access points to the community and to the support that they'll need. So I want to have Amy show a few examples of ways to do this and ways that she's done this in Plus Acumen courses.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, so just to reiterate the point that you made before, I think that a key mindset shift that happens for many instructional designers is realizing that not only do you have to put a lot of time and energy into actually creating the course content, but thinking very intentionally about your plan for engagement is also really essential to drive people kind of through the funnel from signing up to the course to actively participating and completing it. And I think just for context, I used to work at Stanford designing online courses there, and I think we would work with professors and subject matter experts and curate a really great course experience for people. But if you don't think through kind of a very scripted and intentional plan for how you're going to send out emails, how you're going to set expectations, how you're going to actually get people through the course, you're not going to reach the quite same desired outcomes. So shifting to Plus Acumen, we have spent a lot of time and resources trying to figure out how you get an activation rate. And so for our courses, we just did some analysis and are finding that for our most engaged courses, about 70% of people are considered active learners, and our average is around 60%. So in the world of MOOCs, that's pretty good. And one of the ways that we are trying to do this is through just setting expectations. So you can see on this course overview and requirements page, we set people up for success by visually representing to them how long each module of the course might take. So you can see that this is the course for human-centered design that we run with IDEO.org, and we're visually representing that class 2 and class 4 are going to be longer, just so that people can get out their calendars right from the beginning, right when they log into the course, and really plan these meetings ahead of time. So setting those expectations is key. The second tip is a week 0 module. So we found that this really varies for different course audiences, but if you are working with a learner population that is very new to technology, new to online courses, new to a platform, it can sometimes help to have a soft launch for a course or a week 0, which is basically where you allow people to log in before the course materials are released to start getting oriented to the platform, especially on NovoEd if they're going to be forming teams. It can be great to give people just an extra time and opportunity to figure out where everything is, organize a team, and set that up before they feel like they have to start going through the materials. If you're working with a more professional audience of like very busy people, like when I used to work with training doctors, we found that they would just rather log directly into the course and have stuff to start with. So again, this is going to vary based on your learner population, but I'd say if you're working with novices, a week 0 module can really help. Finally, this may seem obvious, but having detailed course frequently asked questions scripted out can really be a helpful reference. Obviously, not everyone is going to read them, but having this pre-populated so that in the discussion forums, if people are asking a lot of the same questions, you can just either copy and paste this directly or hyperlink to it will save you a lot of time in the long run, and you'll actually find that some of your either course volunteers or course participants themselves can start referring each other back to these course FAQs, so it can really save time.
I just wanted to add with this course map, so this is a great tool to use in week 0 or on like a, course information lecture page, especially if you have a public course. This really kind of helps everyone feel like part of a community. And if you have a course, if you're in a corporate setting and really this is like, mid-level managers across different branches of a company or different divisions, there are other ways as well to kind of maybe not a map, but maybe like a poll, asking like, what division do you work for? Just so people can really get a sense, get an idea of who their classmates are.
Yeah, and I think just having multiple modalities for people to be able to interact with early on in the course, because not everyone may be comfortable posting to a discussion forum, but if they have a way that they can pin themselves on a map or take a poll, you're just triggering that level of engagement early on that can be really key to making them feel part of a community. And then finally, like I mentioned, we have now spent a lot of time thinking about how we write course emails and course communications. And it may be surprising, but we actually spend probably the most time reviewing these course emails and communications, even more than sometimes course materials themselves. And the reason is that these become public representations of your course and of your organization or your training community. And so you want to be making sure you're putting forth an engaging message that's going to actually trigger people to want to click through and see what's next. Because you can spend hours and hours filming all your videos, uploading everything to the platform, writing all your readings, but if no one ever clicks through, the whole point is moot. So what we found is that instead of doing very, very lengthy, detailed, bulleted communication, keep it to about 2 to 3 paragraphs. Have a minimum or a maximum of 1 to 2 hyperlinks instead of linking to lots of different things, so that the call to action is very clear. So I would take a cue almost from kind of corporate engagement strategies rather than what you might see in some academic online courses where you get very, very lengthy communications. Try to keep it short and sweet, try to have that call to action, and maybe have a tweetable message so that people can share the course and get a sense of the community presence there.
Yeah, and I think that, pre-course emails especially, it ties into community and onboarding because, before learners are able to log in and actually explore and see what the course looks like and what the experience is going to be like, this is the only way that you can really set the tone, whether it's providing information that they need to have before they get started or just, having them learn about who their classmates are. So this next slide actually is a really cool example of that, if you want to talk about this one, Amy.
Sure. So we also tend to compile just class stats for people to show some social proof that there are other people actively participating in this course. Many times we find that with online learning, it can be a little bit hard to motivate people because you don't actively see the other participants in the course or know who's really out there doing it alongside you. So we put together just a visual representation using this infographic tool to give people stats on how many participants there are, how many teams, how many countries, and what some of the design challenges are that they are working
on. Awesome.
Then another thing we've put together is this pretty detailed team formation toolkit. So this is unique for our NovoEd courses where people are actually logging onto the platform and ideally forming a team that they can meet with in the real world, complete activities, complete assignments, and then submit them back on the online course platform. So we've distilled some of the key lessons from the most successful teams that we've had complete our courses over the years and really tried to highlight those into an actionable guide that walks people through step by step, shows them pictures of other teams that have successfully done this and formed teams and completed the course, just to give people a sense that this is really possible, that other people do this, and that it will set you up for success if you are forming a team. We know that reaching out to people right at the beginning of the course can be one of the most kind of nerve-wracking barriers that people face. So as much as we can kind of streamline the process and give them step-by-step instructions, we found that really helps. And we will hyperlink to this team formation toolkit right in that first email that is sent out.
Yeah, and this slide is really to show, within the NovoEd platform, there's a team search function, and one of the things you can do is add not just individual learner profile questions, but team profile questions. So you can have teams, when somebody forms a team, they can answer certain questions that really help others kind of, like-minded individuals who are interested in the same sector, who are working on a similar project, or who are from the same geographic region, kind of form teams together. Yeah. All right, so that was tip 1. We have 4 more, so I'll try to move through these a little bit more quickly. So learning pit stops. Create pit stops to converge learning paths. So as we all know, online courses are meant to be more flexible and self-directed than in-person courses, but it's still important to create opportunities for the learners' paths to converge via periodic check-ins, weekly course information emails, or synchronous events. It really kind of gives them a chance to kind of periodically get on the same page. And it provides some consistency, which a lot of learners find helpful, in working through an online course. So, emails introducing weekly content or tasks, create that sense of consistency and constant awareness of expectations for the learners. And occasional synchronous events as well are a great way to introduce new and authentic ways to increase interaction and communication among the learners. So both of these methods we consider as providing learning pit stops that really anchor the learners at periodic checkpoints and further connect them to the course community. So we'll show you a few. I'll go over this one quickly. So just wanted to show an example of a weekly email that is introducing the content for the upcoming week. So try to have your weekly emails follow a consistent format. So you might want to start with a recap of the task that they just completed or content that they learned in the most recent module, and then introduce the content and task for the upcoming week. And then you can, finish off with an announcement of an upcoming event or link to a current and relevant resource, or just, a reminder to provide feedback on their peers' work, which this one does. So that's an example of that. Amy, do you want to talk about some synchronous events?
Sure. So we've also seen that, especially when people are using online courses as part of a workforce training program or professional development offering or in a corporate setting, it can be very helpful if you kind of convene everyone in person to set the tone, to set the expectations that this is something that supervisors and managers are going to be on board with, and just to get people excited about the opportunity and hopefully have a bit of fun. So for example, we worked with Fossil, the watch company, to take our Social Entrepreneurship 101 course, and they had a guest speaker come and talk about the topic, and then they actually gave people time to, in the room, form teams, meet new people, set up meetings, actually pull out their calendar, schedule when they were going to meet again in person, so that you really have a sense of energy and momentum once the online course starts. We have also held virtual office hours, so particularly if you have a subject matter expert or professor leading your course, it can be great to periodically set up times for the instructor to directly interact with students via Google Hangout or Appear In or BlueJeans or some other video conference tool. There's two primary ways that we've structured this. So one is to have people submit content questions in advance, so you can kind of curate and aggregate those, send them to the instructor, and then have them answer and address those on a kind of case-by-case basis during the office hours session. We have also, for courses that are more project-based, selected teams to actually share their project or visual elements of their project with the designer or instructor and get feedback. And obviously that's not really scalable across a whole MOOC audience, but we found that just having the instructor give kind of themes of different feedback that they would give to one project becomes a generalizable sample that other students can also learn from. So those are two formats for office hours that we've seen really incentivize people to complete that part of the course and get to that step so they can get that feedback.
Yeah, and I can quickly, I think the next two slides show both an Ask Me Anything within the course discussion forum, and I think we also have, a Twitter chat. So these are kind of two forms of the same idea. If you have, it can be, a guest lecturer or, some sort of subject matter expert, even if it's not the instructor, host an Ask Me Anything. It's a kind of live event and a chance for learners to ask questions directly to the instructor, and that can be about topics that have already been covered in the course or anything that hasn't been covered in the course. So just holding this in the discussion forum in the course is a great way to do that, but also a Twitter chat, and I think this can kind of also be a great way for public courses to kind of advertise and promote the course because everyone can see it. Yeah. All right. So intervention. So we say that intervention promotes retention. So basically, as a course progresses, it's common. We've all seen it. For learners to sort of fall off track in terms of meeting deadlines, engaging with the course community, and things like that. But you should not assume that these learners won't re-engage. Instead, you should just make it really easy for them to do so. So, I think here we talk a lot about, sending targeted intervention emails, and we can show you a bit about the NovoEd platform. We have a detailed segmentation feature as a way to reach out to learners based on actions that they have or have not taken. But this is really a way to kind of tailor your communication to the different learner personas, those who just kind of stay in the background and are observers, those who, are trying to meet deadlines, but, have all this other stuff going on. And especially, a lot of learners actually depend on and appreciate reminders. So this is just a quick view of the feature. So you can send emails to learners who didn't complete a certain assignment. You can send emails to those who registered in the past week. So that's a great way to reach out to learners who have joined late. And you can reach out to those who are inactive or who only completed a certain number of assignments. So any learners who are falling behind in terms of the number of assignments that they're supposed to have completed. Amy, do you want to talk about
this? Just two quick things to add there. From a practical perspective, I think that we have found it's very helpful to kind of map out the expected trajectory of a learner through the course and isolate maybe one or two places where you think there might be the biggest kind of barrier to completion or friction to getting through that juncture. So for example, the team formation piece. We will often, after the first week or two of the course, if people have not formed a team yet, send them this targeted email that, again, maybe gives them a pre-written email they can send to introduce themselves to others, maybe gives them the team formation toolkit that they can use, so that's one way to get them through. Then if we see they're not submitting the first assignment, they may get another targeted email. After that, we tend to realize that people maybe just are not interested in this topic, have found that it's not a good fit, so we won't continue to bug them with emails, but kind of having that plan in advance of what we will target and when is really helpful. And so that's the second thing I would say, is that don't go crazy writing tons and tons of different segmented emails. It takes a lot of time, but isolate those critical parts. Have your emails already scripted out before the course starts so that you can really use it as an organized way to engage people at the right times.
Yeah, I think that goes back to making sure you have an engagement plan and sticking with it, because it saves a ton of time, and you don't want to, be making this up as you go along. You want to have something planned so that you're able to test it and identify at the end of the course what worked and what didn't, and what are we going to do differently next time. All right, next tip, teaching presence and feedback. Crowdsource teaching presence to provide rapid, high-quality feedback. So what we mean by teaching presence, I just want to be clear, this doesn't necessarily mean the presence of a teacher. Many of you may have heard of the Communities of Inquiry research by Randy Garrison. It's a concept that existed before online education, but has been applied to online learning by Garrison. So I highly recommend you check it out. But basically, research has shown that among the three elements of a community of inquiry, so social presence, cognitive presence, and teaching presence, that the most highly correlated predictor of student satisfaction is teaching presence. And that basically just involves some sort of instructional team or facilitator really setting the climate for learning and supporting discourse. So, you might be wondering what this means for courses that don't have a single instructor or manager who can dedicate time and contribute significantly to course facilitation, but don't worry. There are many ways to create teaching presence that involve TAs, mentors, alumni coaches, course catalysts, or managers in a corporate setting, and you can even involve your current learners. So the two main kind of components of teaching presence that we're going to talk about are providing rapid quality feedback and facilitating discussion and discourse. So we did a study of 5 public courses on NovoEd that represent over 5,000 participants, and we were able to find out that, from the first assignment submitted, the more comments and feedback that a learner received, the more likely they were to complete the course. So I think this is really compelling evidence for, really the impact, the positive impact of encouraging learners themselves or course catalysts to be commenting and providing feedback on their peers' work. So yeah, I mean, this isn't just an example of that. It can come in the form of an instructor or a TA, sharing a discussion post, calling out specific submissions and sharing the feedback with the whole course. Or, it can just be commenting on assignments, asking questions, giving encouragement, things like that. And this is another example, this is an example of facilitating discourse. This shows an instructor, but again, it can be course catalysts or teaching team members, asking, kind of guiding discussion in a very specific way. So in this case, he's asking learners to share their own disappointments that they've had with their experience in fundraising. And what I like about this one is that it also asks them to read a few examples from their peers and comment on at least one post offering advice for next time. So this is a great example of really kind of seeding a discussion and letting it grow organically. Do you want to talk about course catalysts?
Lisa has used that term course catalyst several times now. Basically what that means is that it's essentially students who have completed the course before that we recruit as volunteers, and people use different terms for it, so course catalysts, course champions, alumni mentors, but then they have kind of this designation that you'll see by their name there. They can help to moderate questions, respond, and if there's anything they can't answer, then funnel it up to instructors. So we found that it's a very helpful mechanism, both to get quick responses in the discussion forums, and also to feel like the most dedicated students have a way to kind of level up their own learning and act in a more active teaching presence kind of way in the course.
Yeah, and it's also great to have them, you can have them answering, basic content or technical questions, but you can also have them identifying interesting discussions that are going on or interesting submissions or learner stories and sharing those with the teaching team, especially in larger courses where it might be difficult for the teaching team to kind of get to know, every single learner.
Yep, and that moves to the next point, which is just that at Acumen, because we run so many different courses and have so many different sets of course catalysts operating at one time, we actually have a whole separate Slack group set up for them so that they can kind of aggregate those impact stories for us and share them in this dedicated place. So that's another kind of avenue that you can use to engage course volunteers.
Great.
We have also seen that in some corporate settings, people will hire dedicated consultants or moderators to facilitate their company's engagement in the course. So we worked with the Department of Labor from the U.S. government to do a large rollout of human-centered design course across all of their different workforce development agencies. And for them, we actually set up in the groups functionality on NovoEd a dedicated discussion forum where students from those different agencies could specifically post their questions, and then these internal consultants or moderators could respond to them there. So it's a great way where you can take a public or free course and then kind of layer on this level of customization or engagement for one specific company or group or organization.
All right, so we are almost out of time, so I want to quickly get to the last point. Beyond the class. So go beyond the class, motivate and incentivize learning through a pathway. So what we mean by this is really providing learners with incentives to advance through a clear learning progression that brings value to the learner at each step of the way. So, it's important to consider opportunities that you can provide your learners with beyond the end of the course, so that it will keep them connected to their community and fellow learners and help them advance in the given content area. So some of the questions that we recommend you kind of ask yourself, will you be offering additional courses that learners should sign up for next? If learners want to continue learning about this subject, To what or whom will you direct them? Is there a larger network or community of practitioners they can join? Can you offer some sort of contest or competition associated with a certain course assignment, and what will the benefit be? Or what are other alumni benefits that you can give them access to once they finish? So it can be like a subscription to a publication, access to a private LinkedIn group, an invitation or discounted registration for a conference. There's so many possibilities. So we have a few examples here.
Yeah, so the two that we primarily use to kind of drive people towards completion, one is mentorship opportunities. So for example, we have a series of 3 courses on social entrepreneurship. And so if people complete all 3 of those, then they are able to submit an application to receive mentorship from some qualified, Silicon Valley experts, social entrepreneur experts, and receive that Google Hangout coaching. So that's one way to incentivize people through a pathway of 3 different courses. And then the second is our Plus Acumen Core. And so that is a dedicated community for people who have completed 3 or more courses that we give them access to a Slack group where we post job opportunities and where we host different live events occasionally. So again, it helps people get driven through that funnel and just feel like they're a part of something bigger if they're doing, kind of putting in their full effort and completing the courses. And that's an example of Plus Acumen Core, where we also showcase them on the blog just to get some public recognition.
Great. Yeah, and this is just a quick example of a LinkedIn alumni group. And a page kind of enumerating the alumni benefits that learners can get once they finish Philanthropy University courses. And this is a contest that we ran in Philanthropy University courses where we took a specific assignment in one of the courses and turned it into a competition. And so the learner whose assignment was deemed to be the best by a panel of judges won a trip actually to Paris for the annual Philanthropreneurship Forum, which was held at Versailles. So that was a great incentive. All right, so just to wrap up, I think, there are so many things that you can kind of try, especially if you have the opportunity to run your course more than once. And depending on the size of your course, your content, the structure, the makeup of the instructional team, and many other factors, a set of engagement techniques that works for some may not work for all. You'll need to test different strategies to know what's the right combination for your course. And even once you find it, it may not work as well with a different set of learners or a different offering of that course. No matter what, though, I think it's important to prepare, which is what we've kind of kept coming back to here. So again, we wanted to leave you with this idea of having an engagement plan and sticking to it. Amy, did you have any last thoughts?
I mean, I would just wrap up quickly by saying, I think if you care about teaching and learning, you might have the reaction that some of this could feel kind of gimmicky or kind of like marketing. Why should you put in the effort? But I think what we have found is that if you really care about getting people to that content that you worked so hard to curate and create and actually have them have a meaningful learning experience, paying attention to these small details about how you make them feel part of a larger community, how you drive messages that incentivize them to click through and complete something, that can actually make a difference to the learning experience overall.
Great. But yeah, we appreciate everyone joining. Thank you so much. And thanks, Amy.